Iceland has some of the best landscapes in the world, so it's only natural that a lot of people want to bring a drone to see these beautiful sights from above. But bringing your drone can be risky. You got the crazy winds, you have an increasing number of no-fly zones, so is it really worth it to bring your drone to Iceland? That's what we're talking about in today's video. Hey, my name is Jeannie, and I have spent the past 8 years traveling all over Iceland, taking photos and videos so that I can help you plan the best trip ever. Let's get into it. Okay, the first thing that you're gonna wanna consider in bringing your drone to Iceland is that there are so many no-fly zones. And what I mean by that is that it is prohibited, signposted to not fly your drone in a lot of different areas. Whether it's the national parks or the main attractions, yes, I'm talking about Seljalandsfoss, Skogafoss, the Glacier Lagoon, Reynisfjara, all of those places, you're not allowed to fly your drone. Now this is for a few reasons. Number one, it's because it's annoying. It's annoying to have the buzzing constantly above head. Second of all, it's because of the wildlife preservation. So around a lot of these attractions, there could be some birds flying around, and then a drone can be a hazard to that. And the next thing is just nature. Either way, when it's signposted, do not fly your drone here, do not fly your drone here. I see a lot of people not following this rule, and it's so annoying. Like, why do you think that you get an exception to the rule because you need this footage for Instagram? So like I said, for those main attractions, I mean, a lot of people want to just document their trip. Maybe you want to do like a follow video of the camper van that you rented. You know, maybe you want to get that big perspective. I totally understand. I mean, I want to use my drone as often as possible as well. But the thing is, no-fly zones are all over the country and they're increasing all the time. So just be aware of that. Right along with this topic, I wanted to mention the regulations and permits as well as the height limitations just before we tackle the other tips as well. So the first thing, and this is directly off the Icelandic Transport Authority website, is that drones weighing over 250 grams require a permit from the ITA. The other important thing to take away from their website is that the maximum allowed altitude for drones in Iceland is 120 meters or 394 feet. Again, respecting those regulations, and also always check that website for updated numbers before you travel. Another major consideration in whether or not you want to bring your drone to Iceland is the weather. Poor Iceland. Oh, I feel like I talk about the weather in every video. It doesn't matter. It's important because it is critical. The weather in Iceland: windy, rainy, cold. Not really things that lend well to the drone. Let's talk about the wind first of all. They make a wide range of drones. You have your mini travel drones that are lightweight and portable and compact, and that's great. And then you have your drones in the middle, and then you have like big, expensive, rig cinematic drones. For the purposes of this video, let's just say that the average person that owns a drone is going to want to have like that mid-range, maybe even on this lightweight and compact. My drone is right in the middle. It's not the cheapest and lightest, and it's not the most expensive and bulkiest. So the wind in Iceland is almost guaranteed. The nicest days in Iceland is when there's no wind. And even though if it's like 40, 45 degrees, we're always like, it's so nice out today. So with that, when you're flying a drone up into the air and there's wind, and it's not just like a gentle breeze, it's like wind and windy. And it's going to push your drone, and it's terrifying, by the way, when your drone gets, taken with a gust. So in that case, you either don't want to fly, or you want to keep the drone low and slow. But those lighter weight drones will not do as well in Iceland, right? So just considering that, if you have one of those really lightweight drones, you might want to leave it at home or bring it, but know that you might not be able to fly it as often as you want because of the wind itself. The other factor that comes into play quite often is rain. And by this, we're not having huge downpour thunderstorms, but the rain is kind of like always there. Drizzly, kind of like spinning rain is pretty common. So for that reason, if you have an expensive, drones are not cheap. So if you have gear that you want to protect, you're probably not going to want to throw your drone up into the air when it's raining. If you have, again, that very, very light rain, maybe you're going to be okay to get a few minutes of flying time. But overall, getting that drone wet over and over again is not ideal, especially for the lens. And then obviously the last part of the weather in Iceland is the temperature. If you didn't already know this, cold weather zaps batteries. So cell phone, camera, drone, all of those things, you're not gonna get the battery life out of your device when the weather is cold. So for that reason, maybe consider that your battery could maybe be cut in half or have like the 3/4 the amount of normal battery power that a battery would have under normal non-Iceland temperatures. Again, always have backups. So I have 3 batteries with my drones, and what I'm doing is just rotating the charge. So we have one, with the drone flying up in the air, and then 2 on the charger, and we just rotate as needed. Because depending on the drone you have, you can get anywhere from like 20 to 45 minutes of flight time. By the way, if you're planning a trip to Iceland, and especially if you're trying to take photos of these beautiful locations, make sure to grab a copy of my Iceland travel guide and maps. These guides are filled with so much information that you will need to plan the best trip ever, and my maps are jam-packed full of hidden gems, hot springs, hiking, and secret locations that you can't find anywhere in the guidebooks. Let's talk about another big consideration in bringing your drone to Iceland, and that is the daylight hours. It matters so much for your itinerary, but it also matters for your drone. So get this, in the summer, you have tons and tons of daylight, right? Long daylight hours, sometimes up to 24 hours of daylight. In the winter, you're having opposite that problem. You're having just this short window of daylight hours. In the darkest month, we're getting down to 4 hours of light in the sky. So all this means is, depending on the time of year that you're traveling to Iceland, you want to be aware of how much possibility you'll actually have to use your drone. So here's the thing, in summer with all of those long daylight hours comes harsh light. The sun that's staying up in those higher angles for a majority of the day, and with that, you're gonna have really crazy light coming down harshly on your subjects. So because of this, I always recommend to have ND filters. Otherwise, your shots are gonna be super blown out and not even fun to use. On the opposite hand is the low light conditions of winter. So with this, obviously you're gonna have less shooting hours. And keep in mind that you're able to explore in somewhat of those twilight hours, but you're probably not gonna get great photos or drone shots or videos. But the other thing you really wanna be aware of is having aperture control. Now again, just depending on the drone that you have and the quality of the camera that's built into the drone, in those low lighting conditions, that's when that control of aperture is super important. Another thing to consider is the landscapes. So again, Iceland is not short on any gorgeous landscapes by far. Volcanoes, glaciers, waterfalls, black sand beaches, you name it, we got it. However, with that comes potentially dangerous and hazardous flying situations. You got the wind, you got the mountains, and those things in combination can sometimes be really dangerous for your drone. I will give you a personal example. One time we did this amazing hike up into the mountain to find a waterfall, threw up the drone, started flying, and got a huge gust of wind that nearly crashed our drone into the cliffside. It was terrifying, right? Like my whole drone life flashed before my eyes. And by the way, I get very attached to my drone. I call him Floki. It's the love of my life. Anyway, you don't want to put yourself in a risky situation where you're going to be crashing your drone to begin with. But like I said, between the weather conditions and the crazy harsh landscapes, sometimes Mother Nature just takes over and you lose a drone or you break a drone. Another good couple of examples, the volcanoes that have been happening in Iceland. A lot of people are bringing their drone to the volcano site. Obviously a great idea. However, people that are flying too close to the magma that's coming out of the earth are finding that the drones don't like that, so they melt or, even worse, malfunction and fall into the crater. So you're losing your drone. Or certain situations where if you take your drone and you're flying too far and you lose signal and the drone drops into like a river or something, and then now you have not only lost your drone, but now you have contributed to spoiling nature because now there's a battery leaking somewhere in the earth. Okay, that was my soapbox. The point is, A, the landscapes are crazy. You just never fully know what you're up against. Things happen. One last thing on the landscape piece, which I kind of mentioned before, was the wildlife. So there's a lot of different bird species in Iceland. They love to hang out around the cliffs. They love to hang out around the waterfalls. Just really try to be mindful of the wildlife and protecting their natural habitat. I mean, they're at home, they're trying to, just live their best life, and having a drone come in is frightening and disruptive. So good thing to keep in mind. All right, all of the information that I have just discussed, super critical for making your decision. I don't know whether or not to bring your drone to Iceland, but please, please, please always check the website, Icelandic Transport Authority. I'll put a link in the description box so you have all of the updated information before you plan your trip to Iceland so that you can make the best decision for yourself. If you guys found this video helpful, then maybe you're gonna wanna check out what camera gear I suggest for Iceland. So make sure to watch that video that's popping up next on the screen. Until then, I'll see you in the next video, my friends. Happy planning.